Welcome to Part 8 of Identity and Access Management. Domain Controller. A domain controller is a centralized server that authenticates users and devices within a network and enforces security policies. It acts as the gatekeeper of enterprise identity and access. The most common example is Microsoft Active Directory or Azure Active Directory or LDAP based domain controller. Why domain controllers matter? From an IAM perspective, it helps with authentication, wherein it helps verify user identities, whether it's a username or a password. It helps with authorization, is wherein it controls what resources user can access. It helps with policy enforcement, wherein it helps apply security rules, which includes password policies, account lockouts, etc. It helps with directory services, wherein it stores identity data, which is users, group, computers, etc. It helps with single sign on, which facilitates seamless access across resources. And it helps with access auditing, which is logging successfully and failed logins, logs successful and failed logins, changes, and administrative actions. Let's look at the risk related to domain controllers. First is compromised domain controller or DCs. If it is compromised, there is a full control over identities and trust relationship if there is a compromise. Hence, DCs are the first targets on any attackers, one of the first targets. Once you have control over this, then the rest becomes a little easier for navigating. Next is insecure admin access. This helps to open doors for lateral movement. Lack of logging. That is, if that is done, then you miss detection of suspicious activities. Next is unpatched vulnerabilities. If so, it can be exploited for privilege escalations. Next is misconfigured permissions. If it is the case, then you have excessive access across domains. Then is credential harvesting. If it is the case, then DC stores hash credentials that can be cracked there. So, what's the best practice? Starting off by restricting the admin access. This ensures only trusted, authorized admins can access the DCs. Isolate domain controllers. By doing this, you can run DC in separate network segments. Use tiered access model. This helps to separate admin account for domains, servers, and workstation levels. Enable auditing and logging. This helps to monitor login events, changes, and directory access. Limit group membership, which is minimizing the use of domain admins and privileged groups. Enable MFA for admins. Prevent compromise of admin credentials. Patch regularly as a good practice, wherein you apply for updates for OS and AD related components. Take backups and test them, because regular backups with recovery testing helps to ensure continuity during disasters. Review your group policies, wherein you regularly audit GPOs for risky settings. Implement secure LDAPs. This is about encrypting directory communications. Let's look at integrating the roles of domain controller. From a user authentication perspective, the domain controller are the first point of identity verification. From an SSO enablement perspective, it facilitates Kerberos or LDAP based SSOs. From a provisioning perspective, provides a role for syncing and creating users in AD. From a deprovisioning perspective, it helps in disabling or removing accounts via IAM workflow. From an access review perspective, IAM platform pull AD group membership for access recertification or certification. From an audit login perspective, it helps forward logs to SIAM for analysis and alerting. In summary, domain controllers are the heartbeat of enterprise IAM. They authenticate, authorize, and enforce access, making them a critical asset to secure, govern, and monitor under any identity and access management strategy. Database service accounts. Database service accounts are non human identities used by application, middleware, batch jobs, ETL tools, or scripts. They're used to connect database for reading, writing, or performing administrative tasks. They often operate silently in the background and are critical for business automation and data flow. Significance from a IAM perspective, well, service accounts perspective, if you look at it, authentication, the role of a service account is to log into a database using credentials or keys. When it comes to authorization, it accesses defined tables, schema, or stored procedures. From an access control perspective, it operates under predefined roles. From an auditability perspective, it should be monitored like any privileged account. From non-repudiation perspective, it requires individual accountability if shared or embedded. What are the common risks if it is your DB service accounts are poorly managed? Well, the first risk of shared credentials. If that is the case, then you have no visibility on who did what. The next is hard coded password in the code. If that is the case, you are vulnerable to leaks and insider threats. If you have over permission roles, then it violates the least privilege principle and hence associated risk will automatically come into play. If you have unrotated credentials, you increase the risk of brute force or theft. If you have orphaned accounts, then it risk is of continue to function after system depreciates or if it is compromised. And when it get compromised with an orphaned account, that's a very high chance. If you have no monitoring in place, it's difficult to detect misuse or anomalies. So what's the best practice? Well, use unique name service account. Enforce least privilege. Rotate the credentials regularly. Vault your passwords and keys. Enable login. Disable direct human use. Include in your access reviews. Use service principles and monitor behavioral patterns. Let's look at from a life cycle perspective. Provisioning. Very similar to any other life cycle, but let's look at from a DB service perspective. Provisioning. It's a place where we request, approve, create account with scoped access. Credential. It's about auto-generating and vaulting the credentials. Reviewing is about regular audit to verify continuous need and scope. Deprovisioning is about disabling accounts when apps are retired or replaced. More of a refresher for you. In summary, database service accounts are highly privileged. They have high privilege, high risk identities that must be treated like privileged account within your IAM. Proper governance, automated provisioning, credential rotation, and monitoring are essential to reduce risk and ensure accountability. Vaulting. Vaulting refers to securely storing, managing, and controlling access to sensitive credentials such as passwords, SSH keys, API tokens, database secrets, certificates. Instead of hard coding or manually managing secrets, vaulting puts them in a centralized, encrypted vault, often part of privileged access management or secret management system. Why vaulting is important? Well, you'll have hard coded credentials or code if you are without vaulting. You would have shared password for service account if you don't have vaulting in place. You would have manually rotated password or inconsistent storage practices. The risks are export secret to unauthorized user, no accountability leading to weak security or human errors, or make audit and compliance difficult. Hence, vaulting solves these by introducing automation, centralized control, and auditability. What are the vaulting capabilities in IAM? Well, it has secure storage, wherein you encrypt credentials at rest and in transit. You have automated rotation, where the passwords are changed or tokens at a defined interval. From an access control perspective, you grant access only to authorized users, apps, or processes. From an audit login perspective, you track who accessed what, when, and why. From a just in time access, you issue time limited credentials for least privileges. From an API integration perspective, you securely inject credentials onto apps or workflows. From a policy enforcement perspective, you apply IAM rules to control how secrets are used. From a vaulting tool and technology perspective, you have few tools like CyberArk, HashiCorp, AWS Secret Manager, Azure Keys, Psychotic, or Delinea Secret Service. All of these have their own specialization, skills, and strengths. So, from a life cycle perspective, well, provisioning, it's about generating and vaulting service accounts or privileged credentials. Usage, it's about retrieving secrets securely via access policies. Review, you have audit vault, access logs, and validate entitlements to secrets. Deprovisioning, well, it revokes and removes unused secrets from the vaults. In summary, vaulting is the backbone of secure IAM for managing privileged credentials and secrets. It reduces the risk, ensure compliance, enable automation, and protects the key to your digital kingdom. Session recording. Session recording is the practice of capturing and logging the action taken by a user, especially a privileged user, during a session with a system, server, application, or database. It's like a video surveillance system for sensitive digital access. Everything the user sees, types, clicks, or changes is recorded. Why session recording is important? Well, first, accountability. It tracks what user actually did, not just what they were allowed to. Audit trail provides evidence for compliance, investigation, and forensic. From a risk detection perspective, it identifies unauthorized or suspicious behavior in real time. From a policy enforcement perspective, it ensures users follow standard operating procedures. From a regulatory compliance perspective, required or recommended by standards like SOX, PCI DSS, HIPAA, ISO 27001, etc. What gets recorded? Well, depending on the implementation, recording may capture command line activity, GUI based activity, mouse takes, keystrokes, file access, timestamps, IPs, host names, or screenshot or full video frames. So, from an IAM perspective, how does it fit in from session recording? Well, from privileged access management, it records all high risk admin actions. From a just in time access, it monitors temporary elevated access. From a zero trust IAM perspective, it verifies behavior using contextual access. From an audit and compliance perspective, it meets requirement for tracking who did what. From segregation of duty perspective, it enforces transparency where role overlaps. From incident response perspective, it allows real-time review and replay of suspicious action. What are the tools? Well, we have CyberArk. It records privileged user sessions with searchable playback. From a beyond trust perspective, it offers session monitoring and live termination. From an observe IT perspective, it's focused on insider threat detection. From a Alex Bastion perspective, as a tool, it helps with session recording with real-time alerting. When it comes to Microsoft Entra and Azure Bastion, it helps in session monitoring in a cloud native environment. From a best practice perspective, for targeting high privilege users, focusing on admin, DBs, and root users. Encrypt recording, it protects sessions at rest and in transit. From log access to recording, it helps monitor who views or downloads them. From an integrated with SIAM perspective, it uses alert for behavioral anomalies. By regular review using recording in internal audits or post incident reviews, it helps with that. It keeps only as long as needed for compliance by defining retention policies. In summary, session recording is a key control in IAM and PAM strategy that adds visibility, enforces accountability, and helps detect risky behaviors before they lead to breaches or compliance failure. Just in time access. Just in time access is a security approach where access to critical systems, data, or resources are granted only for a limited time and only when needed. Instead of user having always on privileged access, they receive temporary access that automatically expires. Why it matters? Well, from IAM lens, GIT access is all about reducing the attack surface and enforcing least privilege. It addresses the risk of permanent admin rights, unused elevated access, forgotten entitlement. With JIT, access is time bound, task specific, auditable, and revoked automatically. How it works in practice? Well, users or system request elevated access. Approval workflow or automatic rules evaluate the request. Access is granted temporarily. Then access is revoked automatically after time expires or the task ends. And sessions are logged and monitored. Let's look at the use cases. From a PAM perspective, temporary root admin access to servers. It's an application where it can be done. And its time limit IAM roles in AWS and Azure. That's use cases in cloud IAM. From a DevOps and perspective, it grants secrets or permission only during deployment. When it comes to third party or vendor access, it grants time box VPN or system access. From an emergency access perspective, it provides you the control, logged elevated access during outages. Tools: CyberArk, Azure, HashiCorp, AWS IAM, Beyond Trust. These are some of the tools that is there, and it has its own capabilities. You can look at the screen and map it out. From a best practice perspective for JIT, define clear policies. Who can request what access, when, and why? Implement approval workflows, which include business or security approvals. Use short time window. Grant access only for the exact duration needed. Log all sessions. Is track who requested, approved, and use GIT access. Educate users. It is promote security awareness and policy adherence. Review patterns. Use JIT logs to identify repetitive requests, consider adjusting rules. Basically, the last part is look at if there are requests which are coming and check out why. If that is the case, is there a time to adjust the categories, adjust the rights, or is it malicious? All of these can be action post review. In summary, just in time access is a proactive IAM control that minimizes standing privileges, strengthens zero trust, enhances security posture by granting only what is needed, only when needed, and no more. Credential rotation. Credential rotation refers to the routine change of credentials such as password, API keys, SSH keys, database password, service account secrets. The goal is to minimize the risk of credential compromise by ensuring no one can use the same credentials for too long. Why it's important? Well, without rotation, you will have static credentials, forgotten credentials, insider threat, and audit failures. Static credential can easily be stolen, example, or reused by attackers. Forgotten credentials may remain active indefinitely, also known as zombie credentials. Insider threat, wherein a user can share or misuse long lived credentials. When it comes to audit failure, non compliance with standards can cause you heavy penalties and censures. Hence, rotating credentials regularly reduces exposure, enforces IAM hygiene, and supports zero trust. There are few types of rotations: user password, privileged accounts, service accounts, secrets and API token, and SSH keys. These needs rotations. So how does it work? Well, we first identify credentials to be rotated, manual or automatic. Schedule the rotation frequency. Automate the process using IAM and PM tools for vaulting. Notify impacted system or users. Update systems using new credentials. Log the event for auditing and verify successful rotation. From a best practice perspective on credential rotation, Automate where possible. Set rotation policies. Use unique credentials. Audit and log. That is, track rotation events and failures. Avoid hard coded credentials. Test post rotation. Similar tools as discussed earlier can be used for credential rotation. There is CyberArk, HashiCorp, AWS Secret Manager, Microsoft Entera, or Beyond Trust or Psychotic. In summary, credential rotation is a foundational IAM practice that protects systems from stale or compromised credentials. When automated and enforced, it greatly reduces the risk and improves audit readiness across the identity ecosystem. Identity Federation and SSO. Federation enables identity portability using protocols like SAML or OIDC. SSO simplifies login experiences while maintaining centralized control and auditability. So, what is federation in IAM? Well, federation is like creating a trust bridge between two systems so that users can log in once and access resources across multiple systems without creating separate username and password for each. Think of it like using your Google ID to sign in into YouTube, Trello, or Dropbox. You don't need a new account each time, is it? That's federation in action. So, what happens in federation? Well, you go to app A, which is your service provider. App A says, I don't handle login. Let's check with your identity provider. So, you are then redirected to your identity provider, example Microsoft. You log in once there. The identity provider sends back a secure token. And then your original app A accepts it and logs you in. No new password is required for app A. You trust the identity provider. This is how the flow works. The key concept in federations are identity provider, which is the system that authenticates the user. Second is your service provider, the system that provides the service or app. Then there is token, the digital proof that says this user is legit. The next is trust relationship. It's a secure agreement between your identity provider and service provider to accept each other's claim. So that's how federation works. Let's look at the protocol and comparison. SAML versus OIDC. In SAML, the use case is enterprise apps. It uses XML based standards, token in SAML assertion. Protocol base is built for enterprise SSO. Its flow is complex, less friendly for mobiles though. Example is ADFS, Okta, Ping, Cobalt. When it comes to OpenID Connect or OIDC, it's generally used in web and mobile apps using Auth 2.0 or web-based login. As with SAML, it uses XML. In OIDC, it uses JSON and REST-based system. The token is ID token. As I said, it's built on OAuth 2.0 for modern web login. It's lightweight compared to SAML, and it is developer friendly. Example here is the global sign-in or Microsoft Entra and Auto. So in summary, federation allows one identity system to be used across multiple platforms. SAML is popular in corporate environments for web-based SSO. While OIDC is newer, it's more flexible and used widely in cloud native apps and APIs. Similarly, from a use case perspective, legacy enterprise system uses or recommended is SAML protocol. New web or mobile app uses OIDC, that's the recommended one. Federated login across organization is either SAML or OIDC based on compatibility. Cloud native or microservice environment, well, OIDC is preferred. Coming into SSO, which is single sign-on, it's a system that allows user to log in once and then access multiple applications or services without needing to log into each time that they access. Imagine entering your office building with one badge and getting access to your desk, the printer room, the cafeteria, the parking lot. That's how SSO works in digital world. Let's look at a comparison with or without SSO. Well, from a login perspective, with SSO you log in once and access all of the apps. Just one login to remember. It's centralized control, makes security stronger. With SSO it is seamless access, improves productivity. When it is without SSO, with login you enter separate username password for each app that you use. You have to remember many passwords. Password reuse is common and hence risky. Repeated login is a waste of time. So now you have a perspective of what happens with SSO and without SSO usage in your organization. So how does SSO work? Well, you open the app. The app says, I need to check if you are logged in. It sends you an SSO login page. You log in once. A secure token is shared back to the app. You are now logged into the app and any other connected apps automatically. You don't need to repeat this step again. So with one login, you end the story there and you move out to your productive work. What's the benefit? Well, it improves security because you use fewer passwords and less phishing attacks are expected, lesser comparatively. You have a better user experience. User focuses on their core BAU rather than trying to remember, recollect, or make errors in the repeated logins. They don't have to do that. Hence, it is easier from a compliance perspective, and it reduces the workload on help desk. Because you goof up on your password, you have to do a reset, reboot, check, and don't know how much it breaks, which part it breaks. So that much of effort are saved. Common providers are Microsoft Entra ID, generally for cloud and third-party apps, Okta, Google Workspace, Ping Identity, One Login, Auto-O. So these are some of the providers, but depends on what you are using. You can use something else which is convenient for you, comfortable for your enterprise. So be it. But these are some common ones are generally used in medium to large organizations, and now smaller organizations also are aligned to these. What are the key considerations for SSO? Well, if the SSO provider is down, access to all app may be blocked. So that's the downside of having a SSO. It needs stronger MFA to avoid becoming a single point of failure. Now do note, while SSA gives you that flexibility that you log in once and don't have to worry about it again, it's also your weakest area. So if an attacker is able to crack that one login, he's able to get access to all. On the other side, if you don't have an SSO, it increases your workload on individual, but it becomes difficult for an attacker to get through all your access. They might be able to get one, then they have to try it again and take that effort to get to others, because that's the same effort they have to put up. With SSO, when you log out from one session, may need to propagate across all apps. That might take some time if it is not properly configured or automated, or if the integration is not done right, you might have some backdoor open. These are something that you need to consider when you touch the SSO aspects of logging in. In summary, SSO simplifies access by letting user log in once and access many apps. It improves security, reduces password fatigue, and enhances user productivity, making it a core part of modern IAM system. Let's look at some secure development, a checklist. When it comes to planning and readiness, you start by identifying the use case, what apps, services you need to support. You just don't go and start implementing. Go through this checklist. Again, this is a reference. You can add, you can remove, you can customize this based on your own company's specific needs. But this is something that you can use as a reference to start with. So, planning and readiness, how do you start with it? You have first identify the use case, list identity sources, choose your SSO protocol, select your SSO provider. Important, train your stakeholders. That's from your planning and readiness perspective. Coming on to the second part, which is configuration and integration. First step is to enable MFA. Configure your identity provider. Register applications. Then map user roles and accesses. Then you enable SLO, which is single logout. Then restrict non-SSO access, which is block bypass methods or direct login URL. All of these should be blocked once you enable your SSO. Once this part 2 is done, then you move to testing and validation. Test your user scenario, include your employee, vendor, mobile access. Validate token security. Inspect your token for the correct claim, expiry, important aspect, and encryption. Simulate your session expiration. Test your auto timeout, session renewal behavior. Observe your logs. See whether it is recording. See whether it is following what your directions are, what your policies are. Test your account deprovisioning activity. That is, verify access is revoked when accounts are disabled. You need to test that. Conduct penetration testing. Include SSO surface in app security assessment. Once you reach or do these steps is when you move to the next, which is security hardening. That is, enforce your password security policy. You would have implemented your initial when you tested, before you tested, but in your test it might come out there are weaknesses or you have an opportunity to improve. That's where you start with this. Enable risk-based access. Block or challenge risky logins. Do that testing. Come back again. Do your test again. Configure audit login. During test, check out whether their login attempts, SSO assertion failures, token reuse are logged. Check for those entries. Check for those samples. Take a sample activity and check whether all of those are logged. If not, go back and configure it again. Harden your position. Make it more enriching so that during troubleshooting you have enough information so you can get to the root cause. Test back again. Monitor with SIM. Forward logs to SIM for anomaly detection. As you are testing, create enough breakage point. Check out whether the breakpoints are logged. Check out whether your SIM is alerting. In case it is not, you have to fine tune your SIM. Again, go back and test it again. Now, between testing and hardening, there would be multiple loops here. Till such time you are convinced you have done enough that it is difficult for anyone to break, or the cost of breaking is much higher than what was initially. Reach a threshold point defined by you and your organization. How much of encryption, how much of logging, how much of alerting, how much of monitoring you can afford. And then test it, validate it. Set your alert, important aspect. Get notified for brute force, failed SSO, MFA bypass. Bring in your red team. Bring in your external provider who would hack into or try to attempt to hack into your system and check your logs. Check the logs whether they are getting registered, logged. Check your SIM if they are able to generate or identify abnormalities or anomalies, and check whether they are able to alert you. Think from a BAU aspect. If the attack is happening, the BAU should know about it. There's no point in logging in if you don't get an alert. So, logging, first of all, is it logging? If not, go and tune it. Test it again. Once it starts logging, check out which logging are you alerting. If it's not alerting, fine tune your alert so that it picks up the anomalies. Define, redefine your alerts. And then you test it again. From a governance and compliance perspective, regularly validate user access across integrated apps. Store the SSO setup, metadata, and protocol in a secured repository. Now, this is not a place where you have stored, where the original data gets collected. Storing is keeping it separate so that in case there is an attack, you have something as a back. There is something which is in place which can help you. And of course, where it originally gets stored, it need to be secured for sure. But you also need to be careful in case there is a compromise of those. You have something to back as a backup where you can fall back. In case there is a ransomware attack, how do you get back? You need a copy. You need a source which you can retrieve and you can start your BAO while the first one is under attack. Think about these scenarios. Offer self-help documents and training videos for the staff. If you are at 20,000 staff, 50,000 staff, you don't want a situation where all of them struggle and they hit your help desk. Your help desk will not be able to match it. The volume will just overwhelm it and the rest of things will go for a toss. The best is to have a self-help. Get that documented. Get the training in place. Train and train again till the time the user is able to really understand what is required so that they can do the job smoothly rather than reaching out to an expert. Add SSO failure scenarios to BCP and DR playbooks. Include SSO in IAM and security audit plans. So, SSO is not just a convenience tool, it's a security control. Implementing it right means enforcing strong identity verification, access hygiene, and audit oversight. Let's do a comparison. Well, let's try to do a comparison between SSO, password manager versus MFA. The primary purpose of SSO is centralized login for multiple apps with one identity. Password manager is to store and autofill multiple complex passwords. MFA is adding an extra layer of security during login. SSO authenticates once via identity provider and gain access to connected apps. SSO, the convenience is very high. When it comes to SSO, it is stronger security but must be combined with MFA for best protection. Enterprise app access and a SaaS platform are the common usage in SSO. Example of SSO are Okta, Microsoft Entra ID, Ping, One Login. Yes, it has a single point of failure risk. If identity provider is compromised, access to all apps is exposed. It has dependency on identity provider and service provider integration. It's medium to high from an ease of deployment perspective and integration perspective. Compliance, it's high, enables central audit and access. It works with limited systems when it comes to legacy. Needs apps compatibility with SSO protocol. Coming on to password manager, while the primary purpose is to store and autofill multiple complex passwords, it saves encrypted password and auto inserts them during login. Now do remember, think through where this comes in. How many times you open up a web page and it suggests the password that you had already done or saved. That's your password manager. User convenience, moderate, still must log in for each app, but no memory needed. That's your password manager at play. It has good security if vault is protected and unique passwords are used. Common usage, personal or business account, web app credentials. Example, LastPass, Bitwarden, OnePassword, KeePass. These are some of the examples that are in play today. Yes, it has a single point of failure. That is, if the vault is compromised, it exposes all the passwords. It has dependency on browser extension and requires a separate vault system. Deployment is easy as compared to SSO. Compliance, it has medium compliance. It helps user avoid reuse. It works with legacy systems, usable anywhere. So compared to SSO, it works well with the legacy system. Coming on to MFA, well, MFA, it adds an extra layer of security during login. It requires 2+ factor, that is either password, OTP, biometric or devices. User convenience is slightly lower because it adds one more step. Security is very strong as compared to SSO or password manager. Common usage is used across all IAM systems, especially for critical access. Example, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, SMS OTP. These are all examples of it. Is there a single point of failure? No. It adds defense even if the password is leaked. There are defenses. You are using multiple layers, right? It has dependency, yes, requires additional device or methods. Deployment is easy but needs enrollment and education. Compliance is very high as compared to single sign-on and password manager. Supports strong authentication requirement and works well with legacy system, universally applicable. In summary, use SSO for centralized access to enterprise and cloud apps, wherein streamlining login and improving oversight. Use password manager to store strong, unique password for systems that can't yet be integrated with SSO. Always use MFA to protect against compromised credential. It's your last line of defense. So, combining all three, at a primary level or primary login, you can use SSO, authenticate once to access multiple apps. As a fallback, use password manager, which helps secure access to unmanaged or legacy systems. For added security, use MFA. It blocks attackers even with the right passwords. So now let's look at some of the policy recommendation on unified IAM strategy with SSO, password manager and MFA. Well, to ensure secure, compliant, and user friendly access to systems and data by integrating SSO, password manager, and MFA into a unified identity and access management framework. That's the objective. So, if I put it up to by integrating all of these, how do you ensure secure, compliant, and user friendly access to your systems and data? This policy applies to all employees, should apply to all employee, contractors, vendors, and third parties. It should apply for all enterprise cloud, SaaS, and legacy application, and for all access method. From a policy guideline for SSO perspective, all supported application must be integrated with the organization IDP or identity provider using one of the protocols. SSO must be enforced as the default login method for accessing cloud and SaaS systems. You need to implement just in time provisioning for apps via SSO where applicable. That's your policy aspect. From an operational control perspective, your identity provider would be Enter ID, Okta, or Ping identity. The session timeout, maximum of 30 minutes of inactivity. Example, you can use that as an operation control. In many cases, it is less than 15 minutes. And some sensitive cases, it could be 5 or 10 minutes of it. What is it? That is depends on your own organization need, and most of the cases application to application based on the criticality. Need to enable single logout if supported. Log all authentication event in SIAM for monitoring and compliance. So that's your operational control. Similarly, when it comes to password manager, all employee must use enterprise approved password manager to store credential not covered by SSO. This is only when there is no SSO for in the organization or for a specific where SSO are not feasible. Maybe at a legacy level. Maybe. The password in such cases, manager should enforce strong password. You need to define what strong is. It need to have encryption. You need to define the encryption. From an operational control perspective, use of approved tools. Define what are those approved tools. There should be no saving of password in browser or text files. That should be a policy also. You need to vault access must be protected using MFA. Vault auditing and activity logs must be enabled and reviewed monthly. From an MFA perspective, the policy guidelines MFA should be mandatory for all SSO logins, all password manager vaults, admin root account, remote access. Your acceptable MFA method should be authenticator apps or hardware tokens or biometrics. From an operational control perspective, you need to reject SMS based MFA for critical systems. Enforce MFA policy via conditional access that based on risk, location, device. You need to monitor MFA failure for brute force or phishing patterns. Let's look at your integration strategy. When the component is SSO and MFA, the integration approach should be MFA should be enforced at an IDP level. That's your identity provider level. When it is about password manager and MFA enforced should be on the vault access itself. When it is about SSO and password manager, well, password manager only used for non-SSO systems, which means those systems where SSO cannot be implemented is only where the password manager comes into play. From a governance and monitoring aspect perspective, conduct quarterly review of SSO integration apps, privileged access, and password vault access logs. Document and approve use of non-SSO apps or legacy logins. Define specific playbooks for SSO compromise, MFA bypass, or vault breaches. ensure adherence to GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS, SOX, and DPDP acts. From a user training perspective, all users must complete annual security awareness training, and it should cover SSO login behavior, proper use of password manager, and recognizing and responding to MFA prompts. From a review cycle perspective, this policy should be reviewed semi-annually by the IT security and compliance. Recommended is quarterly for sensitive systems or as an organization as a whole if possible. Do note there is time and effort with every cycle. Hence, what is that your organization benefits the most considering what are your risk appetite. So you can have that policy review done. Recommended is quarterly, at minimum maybe possible. If not possible, then at least have it semi-annually. Change in technology, compliance law or business should trigger an immediate update. That's how your review cycle should be. Let's now look at identity analytics and intelligence. There are three aspects: behavior analytics to detect anomalies, risk scoring and adaptive access, AI ML for identity risk profiling. What is behavior analytics in IAM? Well, behavior analytics refers to using AI and machine learning to monitor and analyze user activities like login times, locations, devices, and access pattern to spot unusual or risky behavior. Think of it like a smart security guard that learns what's normal for each person and raise a flag when something feels off. So, how does it work? Well, the system observes normal user behavior. Example, Savit usually logs in between 9 to 10 am from a laptop in Bangalore and access only IAM and GRC dashboards. But suddenly, if Savit logs in at 2 am from a device in Germany and access financial record he has never touched, the system detects this as anomalous behavior. In such case, the session may be flagged, blocked, or might require MFA challenge. And alert is sent to the security team or SIAM. Think through whether this has happened to you. If not similar, think about it using your credit card suddenly from a different location or different country, and you have not informed about it to your credit card provider. There would be an alert in the backend, and you might get a call from your card company to verify if it's really you who are using it. That's behavior analytics at play. Some of the common behaviors are user logging in during off hours or holiday, or access attempt from unexpected country or IP, or user tries to access app they never used, or a massive download or file access beyond normal, or users access system not tied to their role. These are common behavior which can get flagged if your analytics is at play, if you have thought through about it and your systems are ready for these comparison and raising the flags. Benefit? Well, it helps identify insider threat and credential misuse early. It helps enable adaptive access decision, whether it's block, challenge, or allow. It provides behavioral context during investigation. It supports zero trust and compliance with GDPR, SOX, or DPDP. So where it fits in your IAM architecture? Well, behavior analytics is often built into an or integrated with your identity provider, your access management system, your security information and event management tools or SIAM tools, or user and entity behavior analytics platform or UEBA. Example, a developer logging in as we mentioned at an abnormal time, or at a normal time there is no flag, no extra check required, but moment it is abnormal timing, then this normal behavior, there would be an alert triggered. We discussed this as an example. Well, IAM control enhanced by, how does it enhance? By behavior analytics. Well, it triggers MFA only if the behavior seems risky. You can have a system where you have MFA, but it's only triggered if there is abnormal behavior, just to do a validation or revalidation to confirm it's really you. It flags abnormal access pattern for review. It adjusts or revokes role based on behavior changes. And it potentially can also end sessions if risky behavior is detected. So, behavior analytics implementation for checklist of IAM, the goal is to detect unusual identity behavior, to improve access security and support zero trust, compliance and insider threat detection. Now, how do you go about doing this? How do you get that system in place? So, let's go through some phases of it and potential checklist. Again, this is indicative checklist. You can have a more defined and refined checklist based on your organization's need. Bring in your SMEs. Of course, this can be a start point or this can be your comprehensive list itself. But I think customizing to your company's requirement makes sense, more practical for you. So, how does it start? Well, we'll break this into parts. First is planning and preparation. First, you need to know what anomalous login looks like, because if you know, only then you can detect. Have a very clear thought process about what is normal login and what is anomalous login. You need to know how a lateral movement looks like. So if there is any movement of that nature, you are able to identify and you can trigger off. You should know what a privilege use looks like and what a misuse looks like. What's a deviation? So defining your baseline is critical here. Once done, you prioritize based on the business risk, whether it's admin misuse, off-hour access. Then you map your data source, whether it is AD, Enter ID, Okta, VPN, endpoints, logs, SIMs, or systems that you have. Once done, choose your IAM tool with behavioral analytics or integrated UBA. Choosing is critical here. Do not go overboard just because your next door company has the same or your friend has it. Review based on what you need, what your organization's unique needs are. Then go about defining ownership across your IAM, SOC, GRC and HR for oversight. Look at my earlier videos on identity access management. It defines how to go about cutting out the roles, defining your roles, creating a baseline for those roles. Those were covered in the past videos. Hope that helps in. If not gone through it, then it's time to look at it. Once you finish your planning and preparation, you move to the next phase of integration setup, which is connect or feed login data from your identity provider. Ingest from VPN, proxy, endpoints, and so on. Ensure geolocation and timestamp normalization. Include group membership with that's RBAC, ABAC model, what you have. Sync with your HRM for context, so you know who is what. Once that's done, you go to configuration and tuning aspect, wherein you set your baseline per user, per group, or roles of, and then look at from a time perspective. Let it settle down. Take your 30, 60, 90 days so that your baseline is right. Do note, this is your start point. You don't want a baseline for one day, wherein certain users or number of users are on holiday. You don't get the right baseline. And the next time when he joins in, you have a flag. You don't want that situation to come in. So first, you get your initial things in place. then break it into per user and group, and then observe how things are so that you get a baseline visibility on what normal is in your organization. Once done, configure your risk scores, set your anomalies threshold, adjust the rules to prevent alert fatigue. You don't want millions of alerts coming on and 99% are something which is not relevant for you. Define it. Define your alert. Define your MFA. Define session block. Define your deprovisioning process and baselines. Then simulate it. Bring in the expert who are experts in creating simulations on suspicious login, downloads, and lateral. This could be a one-time activity to start off with, and then you may be an annual activity. But in this case, you need experts who specializes in these type of simulations. Either build it within or get your vendor or get the experts from outside who will come in and do it for you, test it out for you. You can test your systems and then you have a new baseline if required to. But this is one of the most critical aspects. If you don't test, you would not know what's breaking. Do note, no matter how robust a system is, it has a breaking point. Try to know what is your breaking point. Once you know it, you know how to tune it. Once you know, then you have a plan and a strategy. If the breaking point is too low, you have a problem. Hence, add on to your defenses to reach a breaking point wherein the cost of breaking is higher than the benefit of the gift or benefit of the knowledge that the attacker is trying to gather or the information that is trying to gather or the honeypot that is there. So breaking it should be extremely difficult, but then to know that you have to know how to break it securely, and hence that's where your experts come in. Once you do that, you reach your security and response. Send alert to SOC and SAM dashboard. See whether real-time alerts are there or not. This should be part of your testing, by the way, and see what works, what doesn't. Trigger MFA or block login if risk exceeds your threshold. Again, what's your threshold? This threshold would be defined by your business, by your risk stream in combination with your business set as what is your risk appetite. Do you have a risk appetite and is it defined well? Can it be interpreted, converted into actionable items from a control perspective, from a configuration perspective, from an alert tuning perspective? Auto trigger playbook for incident response. That's your integrating your SOAR. Ensure behavior logs are retained and auditable. So now from a governance and compliance perspective, you need a SOC to review behavioral alert for accuracy and tuning. You need to feed behavior risk into periodic IAM reviews. You need to define what constitutes normal and what is abnormal activity. You need to include behavior analytics in IAM audit scopes. You need to define percentage of anomalies detected, resolved, false positive, and action taken. That's your KPI. So that's what your governance and compliance should factor at minimum. Do note, these are minimum. You can define and refine it, make it more relevant to your business. Key behavior pattern to monitor: failed login attempts, geographic anomalies, time bound anomalies, privilege abuse, data exfiltration. Think through about this, especially the data exfiltration. This is something which I covered in my APT videos. It's a deep video on the subject, so you can take that as a reference if required to. With this, we'll pause here for this part of the video. We will now be moving to part 9 on IAM. I'd like to thank you for investing the time that you have done till now. Much appreciated. I'll have to thank Sarita, Mamta, and Samita as a special mention for the motivation for this part of the video. Thank you. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian. See you in part 9. Namaskar.